Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle a huge topic, the complex 70-year journey that has forged modern Iran. We're going to draw on the insights of Dr. Hassan Ahmadian to really understand the state, its people, and its power. Okay, let's kick things off with a fascinating distinction that is just absolutely key to understanding the country. And look, this isn't just a matter of picking words. It's about recognizing that Iran's national identity is built from a mosaic of diverse groups, not one single uniform culture. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. We're going to journey through 6 key periods to see how this complex nation was formed, from its internal makeup to its, well, kind of lonely and defiant position on the world stage. So first up, let's really get our heads around this foundational idea. Iran is not a monolith. It's a rich tapestry of different groups that have been woven together over thousands of years. And this chart just lays it all out so clearly. Yeah, Persians are the majority, and their language, Farsi, is what ties everyone together. But you've also got huge populations like the Azeris up in the northwest, the Kurds in the west, and the Baloch out east. This internal mosaic, this collection of peoples, that's what really makes up the Iranian nation. So the big question is, how did this nation get to that world-shaking moment in 1979? Let's rewind to the years leading up to the revolution and see how it all built up. You know, the roots of this revolution go way back, but if you have to point to one single event, it's gotta be the 1953 coup. By overthrowing a popular nationalist leader, the U.S. basically cemented an anti-American feeling that just simmered for a whole generation. It put a Shah in power who, despite his modernization plans, was seen by many as an American puppet, ruling with the iron fist of his feared secret police, the Savak. And this slide just perfectly shows you the 2 completely different worlds that were clashing here. The Shah was looking outward, to the west, to Iran's pre-Islamic past for his legitimacy. Khomeini, on the other hand, looked inward. He drew on Islamic governance, populist values, and a really powerful story of independence from foreign control. This was the ideological war that finally just exploded in 1979. Okay, so the revolution wins. But the new republic? It was basically thrown straight into the fire, tested by brutal power struggles inside the country and a devastating foreign invasion that would end up defining it for decades to come. Because for those first couple of years, that big, broad coalition that got rid of the Shah, it just completely fell apart. It became this fierce and often violent struggle for control over what Iran was going to be, a battle between all these competing visions that was only really stopped by a threat from the outside. And that threat was the Iran-Iraq War. Saddam Hussein launched it in 1980, and it turned into an 8-year-long nightmare of trench warfare. As the wartime commander Rafsanjani said here, the sheer brutality and length of it all, it just about broke the nation's spirit. I mean, the human cost was just staggering. It's been called a great calamity. That trauma of immense loss, of being invaded and feeling totally alone, is just seared into the country's collective memory, and it still shapes how they think about strategy today. But here's the wild part. This absolute catastrophe, in a strange way, is what actually saved the Islamic Republic. It put an end to all the internal fighting, it unified the public against a common enemy, and most importantly, it taught Iran a lesson it has never ever forgotten. You can't rely on anyone else. Cut off from the world, they kickstarted their own missile program by literally taking apart 2 missiles they got from Libya. This was the birth of their doctrine of self-reliance. All right, so after the war, Iran's politics really enter this new phase. You can think of it like a constant pendulum swing between 2 poles, one side that wants to open up to the world, and another that believes the only way forward is to stand against it. And this table just shows you that pendulum in action perfectly. In the late 90s, Iranians elect Mohammad Khatami, a reformist who was all about a dialogue of civilizations. But when he reached out, what happened? The U.S., under George W. Bush, slapped the Axis of Evil label on Iran. That rejection just empowered the hardliners, leading directly to the election of the much more confrontational Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. And you have to understand, this wasn't just some throwaway line in a speech. The Axis of Evil speech came right after Iran had quietly given the U.S. intelligence to help fight the Taliban in Afghanistan. So for Iranians, this felt like a massive betrayal. It basically confirmed what the hardliners had been saying all along. You can't trust the West, no matter what you do. So when you put it all together, the pressure, the isolation, that feeling of betrayal, it's no surprise that Iran developed this really unique and, yeah, highly controversial foreign policy that was designed pretty much for survival. So if you really want to get why Iran does what it does in the region, you have to wrap your head around this one key idea: asymmetric balancing. It's basically the playbook for a weaker country that knows it can't win a head-to-head conventional fight with a superpower, so it has to find other unconventional ways to fight back and make sure an attack would be too costly. And you can see exactly how this thinking played out right after 2003. Step 1. The threat. Suddenly, the US military is on Iran's eastern and western borders. They felt completely surrounded, existentially threatened. Step 2. The imbalance. They knew they couldn't match American firepower. So, step 3 and 4. They invest in a network of regional allies, what they call the axis of resistance, as a kind of forward defense. It's a way of sending a message. If you attack us, the entire region will be set on fire. And that brings us to Syria. Iran's intervention there, which was hugely controversial, makes perfect sense when you look at it through this strategic lens. Internally, this was a really heavily debated decision. And it wasn't primarily about ideology. It was a cold, hard, strategic calculation. They had to save the Assad regime to preserve that vital land bridge to their most powerful deterrent against Israel, Hezbollah, in Lebanon. And all of this really brings us back to a theme that has run through Iran's entire modern history: its unique, often lonely, and fundamentally isolated place in the world. See, Dr. Ahmadian's point is that this isolation isn't really an accident. It's built to the very fabric of the country. Iran is linguistically, culturally, and religiously different from its neighbors. It doesn't neatly fit into the Arab world or the Turkic world or the Sunni world. This strategic loneliness makes it incredibly hard to form normal, stable alliances. And what does that do? It forces this deep-seated culture of self-reliance. Whether we're talking about the missile program that was born out of the war with Iraq or the asymmetric network of the axis of resistance, Iran's foreign policy is built on one core assumption: in the end, they can only truly depend on themselves. And so, that's the big puzzle we're left with when we look at modern Iran. Is its lonely position in the world a choice, something it created with its revolutionary ideology? Or is it an unchangeable fact of its geography and its history, a destiny that pretty much any government in Tehran would have to deal with? That's the question that continues to shape not just Iran's future, but the entire world.